What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is my ranking and reviewing of the Velvet Underground's that's right, 5 albums that they released in their short lifetime. What is the connection to Frank Zappa? Well, Gary Kellgren, the engineer on We're Only in It for the Money, once said, and you can hear it on the original pressing of the LP, I think it was removed on later editions, if I'm not mistaken, in which he says that the Velvet Underground is as shitty a group as Frank Zappa's Mothers. So, and I think you could draw a lot of comparisons between the bands. Their sort of immersion in whatever culture they were coming out of, their respective cultures, their sort of adherence to a vision, their sort of middle finger to the rest of what music was doing. One person went completely complex and overboard with it, Frank. The other one kind of went minimalistic, but still filled with noise and filled with incredible ideas. And yeah. 4 of these albums are maybe S tier, absolute perfection. The 5th one is never should have been called a Velvet Underground album. But I'm going to rank them. I'll put the list up after I'm done talking about all 5. And that's about it. Yeah. So anyways, let's get on with number... Yeah, it's a great group. I love this band. So yeah, that's all I got to say. All right. Yeah, on to number 5. Number 5 is their 5th album, Squeeze, came out in 1973. The only member of the band, none of them original, that is on here is Doug Yule. I believe he plays quite a number of instruments on here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, pretty much everything. With Ian Pace of Deep Purple on drums, of all people. Someone named Malcolm on saxophone. Whoever told Doug that he should keep the Velvet Underground name and make this album despite none of the original members being there, they should be fired. Doug should be fired. It was a horrible idea. He replaced Cale when Cale left, I think right during their 3rd album. And it is not a bad album. I think if Doug Yule had the foresight or possessed at that point the hindsight to not call this a Velvet Underground album and maybe just come up with a different band name, I think people might have been, oh yeah, not bad. It's got some Neil Young, Gene Clark, country Americana, early singer-songwriter vibes. And yes, there's some really nice sort of references to Velvet Underground sprinkled throughout the album. Instead, it's like, this is a pale imitation of what the Velvet Underground used to do. A lot of these songs, you're like, oh, that kind of sounds like Sweet Jane. Maybe this is rock and roll. Is this the Train Around the Bend? Is this Lonesome Cowboy? Like, there's all these little, like, musical moments that remind you of better Velvet Underground musical moments. His guitar playing is not that bad. His lead vocals are not that bad. I mean, he carried quite a bit of loaded. Yeah, I mean, it's not a horrible album, but it's not a very good Velvet Underground album. And I do think if he had released it under another name, it would be fantastic. It's just kind of forgettable. I don't think it's a bad listen. It's just kind of a forgettable listen. Though the closing song, Louise, is quite a fun sort of country Americana little romp that I actually think is actually a pretty good song. It's not good enough to make this band's top 10 list, even though they only have 4 albums. But at least the album ends on what I think is its highest note. If you've never checked this album out and you're a Velvet Underground band fan, I mean, check it out once, because it's really not that bad. And it's surprisingly not that bad. It's just, and I really think if he had, what could he have called it? Yuletide? Yeah, no, something stupid. All right, how do you give it another name? I think we would look at it. History would look at it. Conventional wisdom would probably think a little more higher of it. But as a member of a band that he wasn't the original member of and everybody else quits and leaves, he shouldn't have carried on. This was a mistake. But yeah, and he paid the price because it's just a panned, reviled album that doesn't deserve the panning and reviling it gets. The decision to make it a Velvet Underground, you deserve the attack. The music itself, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. But still, easily number 5. Maybe like a B minus, C plus tier, B minus. I don't think it's C plus. Everything else is S, maybe S plus. Everything else is S plus. All right, let's get on to number 4. Number 4 is their third album, The Velvet Underground. This came out in 1969, March of 69. Yeah. And great album, fantastic album. But this is the low-key album in their sort of, in their discography. I mean, the perfect discography. Number 1, well balanced, perfect. Number 2, let's indulge in the noise. Number 3, let's not indulge in the noise. What Goes On is kind of a nice ending jam, or this groove that they write out, that had it been on the second album for sure, even the first album, I think noise would have seeped in, feedback would have seeped in, things would have been chaotic, but it's almost like it refuses to do that. It's like, we're not going there. We're going to stay clean as we possibly can. We're going to stay a little like just, not as noisy. And it works. It's all absolutely fantastic. No John Cale on this one. Doug Yule appears for the first time, writes the lead-off song, Candy Says, which is a great little low-key type, ballady type, but still pretty intense song. You have some absolutely beautiful songs on here. Pale Blue Eyes, absolutely amazing. Jesus, absolutely beautiful. That's the Story of My Life, maybe one of the little more funner things on here. The absolutely whimsically great After Hours, which REM used to close with that. They did that, I think, as an encore back on the Green tour, I think is when I saw them do that. I don't know if they did it on other tours. But yeah, it's got the fantastic What Goes On, which again refuses to get noisy at the end. The other kind of more upbeat, Beginning to See the Light, which is kind of more in line with some of the stuff on the first album. But sort of the main sort of where they kind of flex their weird muscles and still be very arty is a song called The Murder Mystery, which alternates between these two sort of rhythmic motifs, but in both of them, they have parallel people talking or parallel people singing at all points. So you have someone in each channel just kind of coming at you with nonsense. I think everybody's involved on that. Like Maureen's talking on that. Sterling's talking on that. Doug's on that. Lou Reed's on that. Everybody's involved in Murder Mystery. And it almost feels like this weird schizophrenic, like musical capturing of schizophrenia, because you do have these dual voices that are at times chaotic and then at times a little bit calmer and then at times chaotic, and then towards the end of the song things kind of break down to this like simple, almost childlike piano motif, but then other piano motifs come in, and so by the end of the simplified piano stuff it still feels kind of crazy and hectic, but with like lighter, more pleasant musical ideas. Yeah, it's 9 minutes of that. It kind of, I'm not going to say it wears, but it's not one of those things you're drawn to re-listen to a super lot, but it's a fantastic song. It's maybe the one reason that it's at number 4 instead of at number 3. Can't be number 2 or number 1, but it might be the reason I put it at 4, because I do think maybe if this had just been 9 minutes of noise, I'd be more compelled to listen to it. But yeah, it's not an easy listening album, but it's definitely more of a low key. It's still got dark tones. It still feels Velvet Underground, but everything's been muted a little bit and just hushed down a little bit more, like late night vibes. Hey, let's not make too much noise and wake up the neighbors type thing. But it's still an absolutely, absolutely fantastic listen. My number 4, their number 3, Velvet Underground. Number 3 is their 4th album, 1970s Loaded. Same band that would be on the last one. You have no Cale still, but you have Ewell, Morrison, Tucker, and Lou Reed. Plus you have a couple additional musicians throughout on a couple tracks. But this is their pop album, for lack of a better word, their mainstream album. They opened up with their eclectic album, they followed with their noise, then they brought it down for their soft one. Then this one was like, hey, let's just be a little more mainstream and see if we can maybe have a hit or two. And they kind of did. Sweet Jane comes from this. I mean, I don't know how many people I don't know how many other albums I have in my catalog that have Sweet Jane covers on them. We got Rock and Roll is from here. We get like a fun, whimsical thing like Lonesome Cowboy Bill, which maybe has some connection to Lonesome Cowboy Bert, right? Is that what that's called? I'm lonesome cowboy Bert coming at ya. Maybe there's a connection. Train Round the Bend, which is another kind of like country hokey type thing. We get some absolutely beautiful ballady, some slowing down things with New Age and Oh Sweet Nothing, both Doug Yule pen songs. The awesome Who Loves the Sun, which opens it up. Who Loves the Sun, just beautiful, almost Beatlesque, just totally Beatlesque. I mean, Here Comes the Sun. If you think of a sun song, you're going to think of Here Comes the Sun. Cool It Down, a nice fun song. Head Held High, nice little upbeat, very Velvet Underground type. I got my head held high kind of rocker. I Found a Reason, another kind of cool, slow burning song. Just an absolutely perfect pop, as pop as the Velvet Underground will be. Still, the lyrics are intense. Still, we're getting some great stuff in songs like Sweet Jane and Rock and Roll has some great lyrics. I mean, all of them do. But again, it's definitely probably their most accessible album. I don't know if it's a good starting point because it doesn't really hint at what's going to happen on albums 1 and 2, but it's an easy listen. It's a fantastic listen. It's a classic listen. Fish covered this at one of their Halloween shows. I just reviewed that show a couple videos ago if you're interested. But yeah, it's a great album. It's just a great album. It's just maybe playing it a lot safer than any of their previous 3 had played it. Nowhere near as safe as Squeeze, but quite a bit safer than 1 and 2. A little bit more safer than 3. All right, but that's easily my number 3, their 4th, Loaded. And it's loaded. It's just loaded with goodness. It's loaded. It's like a baked potato. Number 2 is their second album, White Light, White Heat. Came out in 1968. 1 and 2 are perfect albums. I put 1 above 2 because of the presence of Nico. That alone is the difference. I think they're both perfect albums. There were only 6 songs on here, 4 on side A, 2 on side B. First side opens up with White Light, White Heat. Title says it all. It's white light, it's white heat, it's noise, it's aggression. It's just, yeah, it's a fantastic little Velvet Underground song. I think it was the week Lou Reed died. I saw Bill Callahan of Smog perform here in Texas, and he opened up his set with just this 15-minute, this song's 3 minutes, 15-minute noise-drenched, just absolutely, like, I honestly thought after it was done, they were just going to leave the stage and like, hey, we can't play anymore. Lou Reed passed away. That was our tribute. Sorry, you'll get your money back. Like, it was just, as much as I love Bill Callahan, what they did with that White Light, White Heat just destroyed it. And I have loved the song even more since. The Gift is this shaggy dog story that I think John Cale is the one actually telling it. And yeah, it has quite an ending, quite a disturbing, maybe I shouldn't give it away. Spoiler alert, the ending of The Gift. It's a shocker, but I think you can kind of predict that it would be. This is the Velvet Underground. But it's just him narrating the story over this awesome groove that the band is laying down. Lady Godiva's Operation just kind of proceeds with just some awesome grooves. This band can really fall into some really good sort of distorted rock, just weird heavy grooves. And this is one that just kind of goes along at this normal pace until about 2/3 of the way when like the mixing decisions with the vocals just get all weird and chaotic. And again, like elements of what feel like schizophrenia or some kind of mental disorder just kind of seep in the music. And sort of, it's just kind of gets all like, wait, where'd that come from? Was that a mistake? No, it happened again. It's not a mistake. And it becomes unsettling by the end of it. I don't know what Lady Godiva's Operation is specifically. Like, I don't know, did they make her wear clothes all the time because they didn't like her nudity? Not sure. Here She Comes Now might be the lightest, friendliest, most, easiest thing on here to sort of wrap up side 1. And then side 2 is just a full-on guitar noise attack with I Heard Her Call My Name. It's just noisy aggression, very kind of almost Hendrix-esque, just an absolute assault. And then Sister Ray is 17.5 minutes of just lyrics telling some kind of debauchery. There's debauchery for sure. It's just grinding away and pounding away and assaulting your ever sense. And it's just relentless. And it just kind of goes like this for 17 and a half minutes. And it never lets up. And it is exhilarating. It is fantastic. It is like sort of the framework for half of every song the Swans ever put together. Swans. There's no the in Swans, I don't think, right? And it's relentless. It's brutal. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, there's nothing wrong. This is a perfect album. If I had two reasons why it's not number one, doesn't contain Nico and her mysterious otherworldly voice. And The Gift musically is so strong that I'm okay with the narration that I've heard X number of times over my life, that musically I'm able to get into the music. But yeah, it's like this. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's a perfect album. But it's still number two because they made another perfect album, and it's at number one. Let's get on to that. And number one favorite Velvet Underground album is their first. Came out in 1967. The Velvet Underground and Nico, German singer with a just wonderfully German accent that seeps into her vocals in a way that just makes it sound otherworldly and mysterious and seductive. And she only sings on 3 songs, but the Femme Fatale, because she's a Femme Fatale, All Tomorrow's Parties, and I'll Be Your Mirror. And the impact that she leaves on just those 3 kind of seeps through every other song. One drops in the middle of side 1, one closes side 1, the other drops in the middle of side 2. So they're like all spaced out by 2 Lou Reed songs. So we get Reed, Nico, Reed, Nico, Reed, Nico, Reed. So it's perfectly laid out as far as the spacing on these albums. And she just like, whatever she's singing about, it's almost like David Bowie. I'm just like, this is a world I will never know. Even if the lyrics are things I understand or relate to, I'm like, but her whatever world she's in, yeah, it's this whole other darker, weirder world. This is an album that lyrically is dealing with all the topics that rock and roll is not dealing with or music is not dealing with. Deviancy sexually, drug abuse, just bondage, discipline, sadomasochism, heroin. It's the name of one of the songs, heroin. Yeah, I mean, it's just a dark, intense, unapologetic, just throw out everything else we know about music and just do what we do. And the music is dark and it's noisy and it's like minimalistic, but at the same time incredibly intense. And there's it's a perfect album. And just like Loaded, which goes into much more friendlier areas, it opens up with just this almost like whimsical little Sunday morning. You're just like, oh, this is sweet and beautiful. And then the next song is I'm Waiting for the Man. And the man is not a cop. He's the guy who's gonna let you, like, do that to yourself. So that's what they're waiting for. Then we get Nico's Femme Fatale. We get Venus in Furs, which is an awesome sort of dark, deviancy. We get Run, 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 which the title pretty much describes what the song feels like. All Tomorrow's Parties. Then we get the epic, just descend into madness heroin. We get There She Goes Again, which is kind of a little nicer, brighter number. I'll Be Your Mirror, an awesome Nico performance. Black Angel's Death Song, which, yeah, exactly, and European Sun. We're closing out on a little two weirder, more intense moments on the album, but it fits perfectly in with everything else. It's just a fantastic, perfect 47 minutes, 48 minutes of music. Their first album, my favorite. Not by a lot, because White Light, White Heat is also maybe my favorite. They might be tied. Might be 1A and 1B. But I got to give this one props because of Nico and because of what it did that nobody else was doing at the time. Yeah, easily my number one. Yeah, not easily. I take all that. All right, I'm done. My number one, Velvet Underground and Nico. And that is my ranking of these 4 out of 5 albums. Yeah, let me know yours. I can see anybody putting any of their first 4 at number 1 on their list. I mean, even if you don't like the noise of the first 2, I can see why Loaded or the third one would be your favorite. And I respect yours. I respect everybody's decisions, but I can see where you're coming from. If you put Squeeze as number 1, I don't know, man. I don't know. All right, but that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Let me know your thoughts on the Velvet Underground, whether you think they're as shitty a group as Frank Zappa's Mothers. But yeah, that's all I have. Go listen to the Velvet Underground, people. If you don't know this band and you somehow watch this video not knowing this band, go change your life and listen to this band. Yeah, all right. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Peace.